So even though I have posted 2 whole videos about skating, I'm also just about to finish my social work degree. And I actually have a social work Instagram account where I have been tracking my journey over the last couple of years. And every so often I do Q&As on there just for a bit of fun. So I thought, why not do a Q&A and answer it in video form. So the first question was, someone asked, what made me choose social work over other helping degrees like OT, nursing, etc. Part of that's really easy. Nursing, blood, bodily fluids, just not for me. And actually, I didn't actually know about OT, that just sounds so bad, but I hadn't heard of occupational therapy a lot really before I started my degree. Knowing what I know about it now, I do wonder if maybe I would have made a choice to do that as a degree. I think it sounds absolutely amazing. But I chose social work because I had other certificates. So I had a Cert 4 in community services, and it just wasn't getting me where I wanted to go in the field. Obviously, it's only a Cert 4, so that really limited my opportunities. And I randomly just fell into it. Someone said, why don't you go back to uni? And I was meant to think about it, but the applications closed that night, so I just randomly applied and I got in. 5.5 years later, I've got 2 weeks to go. So someone else asks, tips for new students, / what does a day in the life of a social worker look like, and tips for placement. So I'll break this up. First of all, day in the life of a social worker. Technically, I'm not a social worker yet, so maybe that's an idea for another video in the future. But tips for new students, try not to look too far ahead, particularly in your first couple of subjects. Now, what I mean by that is, I remember I was so excited for my first unit at uni, 2015. And you get the unit guide or the course profile. You get a document basically that gives you all the ins and outs of a subject. And I remember, as most people do, you go, okay, so what assignments are we going to have to do? And so I went and had a look, and it was a little bit of a freak out moment because I looked at the last assignment and I was like, oh my goodness, I don't know how to do that. But actually I'm not meant to know how to do that because that's why I'm at uni. If I knew how to do that, me being at uni probably wouldn't have had as much meaning, or you're a student, and so there are many things that you aren't going to know how to do, and sometimes that can create high levels of anxiety around doing well and wanting to succeed. Tip number 2, if you are a planner, plan it out. I used to do I'll insert a picture. I don't have it anymore because it's obviously old trimesters, but I'll insert some pictures of how I used to plan out my trimesters when I was studying full-time and working, because it was very busy. So if you are a planner, that definitely helped me. If you're not a planner, I would say you don't have to be this incredible, plan everything on paper type of person, but I would say have some notes somewhere about what's due over the course of your semester, just so that you don't forget anything, and so that you can work out what times are particularly busy, because there will be times in the semester that you've got multiple things to do at once, and so it will just help you to prioritize. The other thing I would say, so for me, I study online, so for me, social media and the Facebook groups for my cohort were particularly important. I would say given COVID, it's probably more likely that some of those internal classes might be online or have online methods. If that works for you, that will be fine. But if you're someone that really values that in-person contact, and unfortunately because of COVID, that looks different for you now, or it's actually not there at all, seek out some of your peers on social media. For us, that was Facebook. It's not the same, but it definitely does help. And don't be afraid to ask questions. I know it can be really scary to ask questions of your lecturers and staff. I still get scared sometimes, and like I said, I got 2 weeks to go. But ask questions of your peers. Often people have the same question. Often everyone can help each other find the answer. And also, Just remember that you're trying something new. And when we do new things, we might not be the best at it straight away. And that's okay. You're doing something new, particularly, this year, next year. It's a huge task. So give yourself a bit of grace. It's a learning journey. You're going to learn a lot about the world, but mostly you're going to learn so much about yourself, and just enjoy the ride. The other thing was tips for placement. I think really similar to some of those tips for new students. I would say go into your placement, or try to go into your place with an open mind, particularly if you are at a university where you don't really get to put in any preferences, and you might get placed somewhere that is not your first preference. Two things. Number one, I would say use it as an opportunity to try something new, particularly if you say, I know when I graduate I really want to go into AOD, or I really want to go into domestic and family violence. As much as it's really tempting to have a placement in that area because you're passionate about it, take the opportunity to try and have a placement in something that you thought you would never work in. The reason I say that is, number one, you're going to go into that area with a lot of support. You are a student, so you shouldn't be given responsibilities of a practitioner, which means you have a lot of supervision, you have a lot of space, an incredible amount of space for learning, and you should, if you're in a healthy placement, have the opportunity to ask, a million questions every day, if that's what you need to do. And so I think that's the best opportunity to do something that might be a little bit outside of your comfort zone, might be something completely that you thought you didn't want to do, couldn't do, because it's a really safe environment. Again, it should be a really safe environment for you to do that learning. So if that happens to you and you don't get your first preference, and you do actually get something that you are really worried about that you won't like, I would say try and just use it as opportunity. And if at the end you still really don't like that area of practice, then at least you have that lived experience that that's not for you. The other thing is self-care and boundaries is absolutely paramount. I've had two different placements now. One is from home and the other involved quite a lot of travel. The one from home has been pretty okay with setting boundaries and self-care, but the one that required almost an hour of travel each day, which is my own fault, not my uni's fault. A lot of my other self-care went out the window. I stopped being able to exercise. I don't think I cooked a proper meal. It was just a lot, and I didn't expect that placement to be as demanding as it was. The actual placement was fantastic, but because of the travel, it was a really big commitment. But I think particularly in your first placement, because it's so different, it's such a different way of learning, find ways to do self-care and stick to them. It might be really tempting just to not, particularly if you're busy, particularly if you've got caring responsibilities, if you've got a young family, if you're trying to work at the same time, which I did in my first placement. It can be really easy to slip out of that, but I would say that me doing that was probably one of the reasons I made it through the first one, because it was exhausting. I also got a lot of questions about my honours year. So people asked, was it worth it? Can I hear more about your thesis? What made you decide to do honours, and things like that. So at my university, we have 2 research subjects that are compulsory, they're in the degree. So when I completed those subjects, one was a second year and the other was a third year subject. They both showed me that I really enjoyed research and that I really liked, the way of thinking that you do when you look at research. So those 2 subjects showed me that I really liked it. And I also, I just had an interest in doing it. I just thought it would be such a different way to do my final year. It's again, similar to placement, it's a really different way of learning. It was something new. It was a new experience of assignments and work. I got to, at least at my uni, you get to pick, within reason, the topic that you want to look at. And I just thought it would be something that would stretch me. I enjoy writing essays, I enjoy writing papers. And so I thought this would be a way to hone that, but also write something that I hadn't really, written before. So that's why I chose it. I also have aspirations to do a master's degree, and I also I really want to do a PhD one day. So I kind of knew that it would be a good taste. And if I did it and I hated it, then I knew that a PhD wasn't for me. A lot of people ask, does it help you in your, job search after? I don't know. I've like I said, I'm nearly finished, so I haven't really gotten that first graduate job. So I can't tell you for sure whether it does or it doesn't. Some of my teaching staff say that it does. Some of them say that it's helpful, but it's not, it's not paramount. I think what it does show is it shows that you can find a problem, understand the problem, see if there's any gaps, and then propose something that addresses the problem. But just because you do honours, or if you don't do honours, it doesn't mean that you don't know how to do that. But I think having that part of your degree just formalises the fact that you can do that. So those are some of the things that made me choose to do it. I would say if your university has some of those subjects, that will be a really good, or could be a really good indicator to you whether or not you might like to pursue it. And was it worth it? I think that for me it was. 2020 has been hectic, so for a lot of my cohort, just completing it has been a really significant task. Some of us, we're all at different stages because of COVID 2020 and just everything that goes along with that. But for me, I think that it was. There were points along the journey where I was like, what am I doing? Why did I choose to do this? I could just be doing a regular subject and not having to do this, this huge thesis. I could be doing placement on its own and not having to worry about basically all these other assignments. So there were moments where I really couldn't see the point, but they were fleeting. And I think the moment that I printed out my draft for line edits a couple of weeks before it was due, when you hold that in your hand, it's a really cool moment. And that was only the draft. Just to have a body of work that you produced is just really, really cool. Essentially, I looked at experiences of young progressive Christians, so age 18 to 30, and their experiences of their progressive values, and did that affect their ability to belong to their church community. And then obviously there was a social work element to that. So with all of those experiences, what can social work practitioners learn to work with that cohort of people? There was a few reasons why I chose that topic. Number one, I guess it is a really personal journey of my own. And again, there's probably a whole other video there, but my own journey of progressive Christianity and social work values, and that affecting my relationship with Christian communities and just the church in general. And that's a similar story for a lot of friends of mine. And so I thought, well, if it's kind of a thing for this group of people, I wonder if it's a thing for more people, and let's find out about it. And the other thing was social work kind of steers away from religion, particularly Christianity. There's a whole lot of research on that if you're interested. And there are many reasons why, some reasons it's totally valid. But at the end of the day, if we are to recognize our whole client or our whole community member, for those individuals who religion is really important, we need to be able to have those discussions. And so there's also a lot of research out there about practitioners feeling unable to have those discussions, whether because they don't feel like they know enough, they don't want to offend people, they struggle with religion themselves. Again, totally valid, but we need to be able to have these kind of conversations with our clients. And so I just think it's so important to have that understanding, and so to see what that can add to social work knowledge, I think was really valuable. And for me too, yes, I identify as a Christian, so I'm happy to have conversations about Christianity, but also acknowledging that understanding religion in practice is not just understanding Christianity. And so for me, my thesis also showed me, major gaps where I want to go and do some more learning about other tenets of faith and other frameworks of faith, so that I can be really confident in having conversations with those clients where it is really important. Because at the end of the day, we obviously want to practice from a really strength-based, person-centered framework, and I think being able to have those discussions is really significant. So that is a little bit about my thesis. It might be published, so stay tuned on that one. But yeah, if you have more questions, I guess leave them below and I can try to answer them maybe in another video. I have a question here that says, what is my coffee order? Don't judge me, but right now I'm drinking an iced instant because it was just too hard to make actual coffee this morning. If I'm at a cafe, it's an iced latte. I would drink iced coffee all year round. It's got to be ridiculously cold for me to have a hot coffee. There's probably about 2 weeks a year here in Canberra where it's ridiculously freezing and I'll get a hot one. If I do get a hot one, it's usually a cappuccino or a flat white, but always iced, always cold. Last question here, someone asks me, what are my plans after graduation? Oh, I don't know. So it's really interesting when you finish something and it's taken you so long. So this has taken me 5.5 years. And so now that I'm at the point where it's like, oh, I'm not just a student working part-time anymore, I actually need to get a real big girl job. I don't know. I've applied for a few different graduate roles, some in areas where I thought I would never work in. But again, similar to that placement idea, as a graduate, in a graduate role, there is a little bit more support there. So I thought, why not take a role that I'm not as comfortable in, because I am more supported in learning of that. And so there are a lot of roles in health, which I'm really excited about. I also have a few community-based roles that again would be amazing. So we're just waiting to see. I think further on down the track, some of my passions are school-based social work. In Canberra, you do need a little bit of practice experience to kind of get in there. There's no kind of entry-level work in that field. So that's for a few years' time. I really also have some plans to maybe do a master's in art therapy or just creative therapies in general. That would be really cool. But I think for the next couple of years, it will just be finding a really solid graduate role where I can just start to put a lot of what we've learned into practice. It is kind of really scary to kind of literally go 1 week you're a student and 2 weeks later, like someone will hire you as a social worker. That just blows my mind. And so I think a role where there is a lot of graduate support is really important for me. Another little side goal over the next couple of years is I really want to go and get my, I don't know what they're called, but like certificate qualification in Australian Sign Language. So as a kid, I did sign language at my school. My principal worked with a lot of deaf and hard of hearing students, and so she was fluent in ASL, and we had like a sign language class. So if you have seen Napoleon Dynamite and you know, like this, you know, that scene, I did that, but I hope not as, you know, not as kind of awkward as that scene was. But I've always wanted to go and get, maybe not all the way to interpreter, but definitely more fluent in that. I just think that would just be really cool. Being able to speak a second language, if you will. And it's just something that I've always loved to do, like since I was a child. So I think just being able to do that and build on that very small knowledge base from when I was a kid will just be great. So they're all the questions that I got asked. If you have any more questions about social work things, studying at university, let me know, drop them down below. We can have a bit of a conversation. And yeah, have a great day. Bye.